So with his big win over Brian Ortega at UFC 306 and now being ranked number 3 in the featherweight division, what is next for the UFC's most highly thought of prospect, Diego Lopes? So as you can see on screen, we've got a couple of options here. I found this post on Reddit, don't know who made it, but shout out to you. So these are realistically the 3 options that are going to be next for Diego Lopes. You've got either the winner of Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway for the belt. You've got the winner of Aljamain Sterling versus Movsar Evloev. And then you've got the fight against the greatest featherweight of all time in Alexander Volkanovski. Now these are definitely the 3 options that are going to be next for Diego Lopes. So let's talk about them. Just firstly, I want to say what a performance Diego Lopes put on at UFC 306. Now, my prediction was Diego Lopes to get the win in the first round. I was close to getting that prediction. Diego Lopes nearly slumped Brian Ortega in the first round, as everybody's seen. Big right hand, knocked him out, left hook, woke him back up. But Diego Lopes fell into the trap, similar to Yair Rodriguez, that they hurt Brian Ortega on the feet. Instead of letting him stand back up and getting the finish, they then follow him to the mat. And it did look like Diego Lopes was trying to get the submission win over Brian Ortega, which would have been impressive, let's be honest. But nonetheless, he didn't get the finish, although he won every round pretty comfortably. Now let's talk about these matchups. So we're going to start off at the top. Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway for the belt at UFC 308. This is a massive fight. Now, regardless of who wins this one, Diego Lopes can definitely get right in there and fight them. He is number 3. But I don't think Diego Lopes is going to fight for the belt next. Now, if he is to fight either Ilia Topuria or Max Holloway, by the way, I think Max Holloway is going to win that matchup, but I'm not so confident in that prediction. I can't see a world where Ilia leaves Max Holloway slumped. Either way, though, if Diego Lopes gets matched up against Max Holloway or Ilia Topuria, I think both guys beat him. Now, obviously, that would be a 5-round fight, as it would be for the title. Ilia Topuria is a really dangerous matchup for Diego Lopes. A lot of people forget that when Ilia Topuria came into the sport of MMA, he was a grappler. Now, is his grappling as elite as Diego Lopes? We don't know. But one thing I do know is that Diego Lopes leaves a lot of openings on the feet, and his chin is constantly up in the air. And if he gets in there against Ilia Topuria, I think the first round will be very competitive. I still think Diego Lopes eats a lot of shots in the first round. But the later the fight goes on, and we've seen it in his latest performances, I thought it was maybe just a one-off against Dan Ige, because Dan Ige was a late notice replacement. He had to make weight like 3 times for that fight. He was meant to fight Ortega at UFC 303. And I thought all those factors maybe played a big part in why Diego Lopes gassed out near the later ends of that fight. But no, the same thing happened against Brian Ortega. Now, it's not massive. It's not like the guy completely falls off a cliff. He's still in there. He's still aggressive. And he's still working at a high pace. But he visibly falls off. And with his chin being constantly in the air and the fact that he does drop off in the later rounds, I think Ilia Topuria would knock Diego Lopes out within 3 rounds. But either way, though, it still will be a fun matchup to see. Now, on the other hand, you've got Max Holloway. I don't know if Max Holloway would be able to knock out Diego Lopes. Obviously, Diego Lopes is an unbelievable grappler and could offer Max Holloway problems. Although, I just don't see Diego Lopes being able to get Max Holloway to the mat. Max Holloway does have really good takedown defense. Now, like I said, Diego Lopes is dangerous and he obviously carries a lot of power. I don't think he'd be able to knock out Max Holloway, to be honest. Max Holloway's chin is just different. And like I said, he does tend to slowly fall off as the fight goes on. Max Holloway is just a volume puncher, and I feel like he would more than likely drown Diego Lopes, especially on the feet in that matchup over the course of 5 rounds. Now, Max Holloway has seemed to find this power in his hands now. Could he put Diego Lopes out? There is a high chance of that. Like I said, Diego Lopes does leave his chin really exposed in there. But I would take Max Holloway to beat him by decision. And I would take Ilia Topuria to beat Diego Lopes by KO. Next up, we've got Movsar Evloev versus Aljamain Sterling. Now, Movsar Evloev has history with Diego Lopes. Diego Lopes made his UFC debut against Movsar Evloev and nearly submitted him in points of that matchup. So there is a bit of beef there. There's a bit of history between those guys. The matchup between Movsar Evloev and Aljamain Sterling takes place at UFC 307. Now, whoever wins this matchup, it depends on how the whole landscape of the division works out, in my opinion. If Movsar Evloev beats Aljamain Sterling, I don't think Evloev gets a shot at the title next. Now, if Aljamain Sterling beats Movsar Evloev, I can see the UFC making Aljamain Sterling versus whoever for the title next. Now, Diego Lopes is probably more popular than what Aljamain Sterling is, and is probably the fight that the fans would it is a fight that the fans would want to see more. Ilya versus Lopes or Holloway versus Lopes. But the fact that Aljamain Sterling is a top 15 pound for pounder and the greatest UFC bantamweight of all time and a former champion, I feel like he'd be on a 2-fight win streak in the featherweight division. I feel like his merits, what he's done for the UFC, and the fact that they fucking owe him for getting in there on short notice against Sean O'Malley when he wasn't really ready to compete. I feel like Aljamain Sterling would then be slotted in for the belt next, and I just don't see them making the Movsar Evloev Diego Lopes rematch, considering Evloev did beat him, and yes, it was close, but the UFC see Diego Lopes now as a massive star, and I just don't think they'd risk him against Evloev. And finally, no, I mean, you could end up doing Diego Lopes versus Aljamain Sterling for the number one contender matchup. Now, that would be then if Volkanovski is the guy to fight either Max or Ilya next for the belt, which again is a very, very, very highly likely thing to happen. I mean, Volkanovski is the greatest featherweight of all time, and in my opinion does deserve an immediate title rematch. Obviously, the UFC haven't went that way. They've went for the Holloway matchup. So you could do Aljo versus Diego Lopes for the number one contender fight, and it is a matchup that Aljamain Sterling said he would be looking to take. So there is that possibility as well. I just feel like if Aljo wins, he will more than likely call for the title shot, and I feel like he would deserve it then just based on merit. And finally, the fight that I think would make sense for Diego Lopes and a fight that I really would like to see, and that is the fight against Alexander Volkanovski, the greatest UFC featherweight of all time. Whoever wins out of Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria won't fight till like April, May time 2025 in my opinion. So they will take time off. Diego Lopes, yes, did take a bit of damage in there against Brandon Ortega, but nothing major. I feel like you could definitely get him out again in December, the last pay-per-view card of the year, or early January. And I think Volkanovski, who's taken a lot of time off, would be the perfect opponent. Now, there has been talks that Volkanovski might be going to lightweight to fight the likes of Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier. Fuck that. I would rather see this matchup. A 5-round co-main event for UFC 310. Diego Lopes versus Volkanovski. Take my money. That would be such an exciting fight. Volkanovski, is he past it? He's on a 2-fight losing streak at the minute, and in both fights he was KO'd. And we know Diego Lopes is dangerous, explosive, and extremely powerful. This would be such a fun matchup. I would love to see where Volk's at in his career, and I think Diego Lopes would really be a tough test for him. Now, like I said, over 5 rounds. I think the first round would be very dangerous for Volkanovski, and Diego Lopes could get him out of there. I really do feel like that, and I feel like Volkanovski's mental is a bit fucked up with the 2 back-to-back KO losses. We've seen him break down against after the Islam Makhachev loss, so the guy mentally might not be all there. But like I said, Diego Lopes does fall off in the later stages of the fight. Volkanovski doesn't. He keeps that energy up. Plus, Volk is an extremely technical fighter and is very sound when he is on the mat. Will keep himself safe if it does get into these high-level grappling exchanges. I don't know if Diego Lopes will be able to submit him. This is just such a fun fight and the one I want to see next. Diego Lopes, Volkanovski, 310, co-main event, 5 rounds. That's what the UFC should do. Let me know your opinions in the comments below. And how do you think Diego Lopes matches up in the featherweight division, the elite guys? And as always, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And I'll see you again in the next one.